I'm Roy Lee Lindsay with the North Carolina Pork Council, and I want everyone to remember, bacon makes everything better.
Wild Dogs and Hogs is back for another week here on the North Carolina Sports Network. I'm Mike Waddell along with the coach Jim Collins. And Coach, it's a big week for you. You get to go home to Elon for the big game between the Phoenix and the Hawks. It's Elon and Monmouth this weekend. A little homecoming matchup for you, or a reunion weekend, I guess you would say, for you and your Elon teammates from back in the day. Are you excited about that?
Yeah, I really am. The interesting thing is I've worked every Saturday for the last 40-some years, so I have not experienced homecoming as a fan. So I'm going to go back and have that experience for a little bit, play golf tomorrow with some friends there, and go to the game on Saturday. Even though the reunion stuff is going on, I still have a sideline pass, so I'm going to watch the game from the sidelines. I can assure you of that.
Do you ever get, if you ever get down to the sidelines, do you ever just want to jump in there and say, hey, do this or do that?
Well, I haven't had that experience yet, so this is the first time that I'm gonna do this.
Security.
I think my wife may be nervous that I may get the bug again doing this and want to go back and try to coach again. But right now I'm enjoying life, so it's all good.
Well, Tony Trisciani and the Elon Phoenix are off to a great season. I know you'll enjoy that. Another one of your compatriots is in action where David Glenn and I will be this weekend as the Old North State Tailgate travels west to Cullowhee and E.J. Whitmire Stadium, Bob Waters Field, for the Furman game.
That's an interesting matchup now because Kerwin's done a great job. Kerwin and I go all the way back to 1990 at the University of Florida. Kerwin was just coming out of the NFL and eventually went back into the NFL. And so Kerwin was a graduate assistant for us at Florida our first year there. Kerwin is a very, very smart, offensive-minded football coach, and will stretch the field in a lot of different ways. Kerwin will do a good job. He'll have a great plan for the Paladins. And the interesting thing is his son Cade is on the staff, going against Gene Chiswick's son that plays for Furman in the secondary. So that's an interesting matchup in itself.
It really is. And I tell you, for a native of Western North Carolina, it is really exciting to see championship football in Cullowhee. I was recruited back in the day at Western Carolina, had a chance to meet the immortal Bob Waters right near the end of his life. But Western Carolina as a community has been starved from a lot of the winning affection that has gone to their neighbors from the north in Boone at Appalachian State. So for Western Carolina, they got to feel like this is their time. What does that feel like when you're part of a program, and you enjoyed this at Duke when you were with Coach Spurrier back in the day, when for the first time in a long time you're bringing success to that campus? I would imagine the adulation and the excitement is something that really holds a special memory in your heart and really is a big part of what Kerwin has been looking to establish at Western Carolina after his earlier success at Jacksonville and Valdosta State.
Well, Mike, the thing is, I had the opportunity to do it twice at Duke with Steve Spurrier and then again with David Cutcliffe to come in and build a program and grow it to the point where you have the opportunity to compete. It's exciting. The building process is extremely exciting as you go through it and putting the building blocks together and growing it and growing the program and seeing and experiencing the opportunity that Western Carolina has as they move through the season. The excitement grows and builds and builds. And as Jim Knowles said earlier in a conversation that I had with him, the expectations grow each and every week. It becomes not acceptable to play well. The standards get very high at that point in time. The expectations become to not only win, but to play well also.
We're going to talk to Jim Knowles as a result of your conversation with him earlier, coming up later in today's show. And along with the top 10 matchup in colorway between Furman and Western Carolina on the FCS level, on the FBS level, it's Penn State and Ohio State this weekend, noon game on Fox at the Horseshoe in Columbus. And Coach Knowles, as the defensive coordinator for Ohio State, that team seems to be playing with a special fire. They had that scare against Notre Dame, but I think the Buckeyes have gone back into their true form of being the big, bad Buckeyes. I have a feeling they're going to lay it on Penn State pretty good this weekend. What do you think?
Obviously, I think the Buckeyes will have a great plan for Penn State. Jim is a very creative guy and will create some situations that Penn State has not faced so far. So I think the Buckeyes are ready. The Buckeyes, of course, are fighting some injury situations, more so on offense than they are on defense. But it will be a great matchup for Penn State and Ohio State on Saturday.
Stay tuned here on Wild Dogs on Hogs. We'll have the defensive coordinator for the Buckeyes, Jim Knowles, with us coming up a little bit later in today's show. Back closer to home this weekend in the ACC, the North Carolina schools, well, at least two of them are in really big games. And for Duke, they have a chance to do something in Tallahassee they've never done before, and that's get a win over Florida State. How big of a mountain is this to climb for head coach Mike Elko and the Blue Devils?
Well, Doak Campbell Stadium, Bobby Bowden Field is a tough place to play. And I've experienced it at Duke, and I've experienced it at the University of Florida. And unbelievably, even with the great record that we had all those years at Florida, we never won at Doak Campbell. We lost 5 times and tied once. Now, we did beat them for the national championship in the Sugar Bowl, but Doak Campbell is a tough place to play. It'll be a real challenge for the Blue Devils. But Mike has done a great job building that program at Duke, and the last I heard, I think he's going to have a great asset back playing, and that's Riley Leonard at quarterback. So it will be an interesting matchup to see the Blue Devils go into Doak Campbell and take on a very, very talented Florida State team.
Coming off that win against North Carolina State and having battled and beaten Clemson at home under the lights, battled Notre Dame right to the very last few seconds before falling in that game, is this Duke team maybe better prepared to go in and to handle the night game at Doak Campbell Stadium with Chief Osceola and Renegade throwing the flaming spear into the center of the field? I mean, that's a spectacle all on its own. Is Duke better prepared, having been through what they've already experienced this season, to go in and have success at Florida State?
Well, Mike, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think once you get challenged a couple of times, you find out what you have inside your team. And by inside your team, I mean, how are they going to respond to adversity? Because there's always adversity in everything that you do in every situation in the game. And how your team responds to those situations is really the cornerstone of what you build on. So how Duke goes in, and there's going to either Florida State's going to take the opening drive, or Duke's going to take the opening drive and go 3 and out, or they're going to go down the field and score. How do you react to that if you're on either side of that? And I think both teams will be challenged by the other, and how you respond to those situations will be critical.
Duke and Florida State, 7:30 Saturday night, and you can watch that one on ABC. Over on the CW at 6:30, Kenan Stadium, North Carolina against Virginia. Usually this is a hot and heated rivalry, one of the staple rivalries for the Tar Heels. North Carolina continues to keep rolling and rolling. Another big win last week against Miami.
The Tar Heels are playing quite well on both sides of the ball, and I thought they did a wonderful job last week of containing a good Miami offense, and once again Drake May came through. And as you remember, we spoke about that number 28 early in the season. He is a good football player, and he has brought along, and we're talking about Amari, and he's brought a quality to that team with being able to run the ball at a very high level that's actually helped Drake in his execution. And of course, the receiving core has been boosted with Tez Walker, and they've got big playability now on that offense, and the defense is coming along playing well. So it'll be a good matchup. As we know, Virginia has had some struggles, and coming into a good atmosphere at Carolina will be a real challenge for the Cavaliers.
Rucker and Gray, pretty dynamic linebacking tandem for the Tar Heels right now. Rucker can lay some hits on people, and your guy Cedric Gray, another spectacular performance last weekend.
Well, he's so steady, and it's just it's like we talked about earlier. You look for that guy that can have the leadership ability to make your checks on defense, to get other people lined up, to have that calmness about him, to make adjustments, but yet he can still go out and make big plays and make plays like big-time players should. And Kamen Rucker's having a heck of a year, man. He is he's playing like a guy possessed, and they're Gene's putting him in good situations that he can make plays. So very impressive what those two guys are doing.
When you look at the landscape that Tony Elliott, the head coach of the Virginia Cavaliers, is operating in right now, obviously with the tragedy of the year ago, it's hard to imagine how you can prepare for that. But just in general, taking over for Bronco Mendenhall and now moving on in his own tenure as the head coach in Charlottesville, Tony Elliott is really starving for success, much like his cross-state rival Brent Pry is at Virginia Tech. Mm-hmm. It's hard to imagine that both Virginia and Virginia Tech could be as down as they are at this point in time. Which one of those programs, the Hokies or the Cavaliers, do you feel like is closer to emerging from the abyss? And that's really where they are right now. They're in an abyss, both Virginia and Virginia Tech. Who's closer to rising up and becoming relevant again in the Atlantic Coast Conference?
You know, Mike, that's a tough question to answer because they both have struggled to make progress at this point in time in their growth of their programs. I think the key obviously is in recruiting and having better players and facilities and all that. And I think Virginia was a little bit behind when Tony took the job in the facilities war, and they are growing that and building that at Virginia. I think probably at this point in time, the Virginia Tech program is a little bit ahead of Virginia in their growth. So that'll be something very interesting to follow, and especially as we move into the recruiting battle and what their philosophies are in the transfer portal and where they're going to go to build their roster and grow from that point in time. But I think probably the Hokies are a little bit ahead at this point.
The success famine in Blacksburg and Charlottesville really does translate to that recruiting war that you talk about, because historically, when North Carolina has been great in football, the Tar Heels have gone into the Commonwealth and they have come out with some spectacular players. Is that the case still today in this world of the transfer portal and NIL? Does North Carolina still look at the state of Virginia and this rivalry as critical to their overall program health?
There's no doubt. That has to be within your recruiting philosophy at North Carolina, because you have to be good at your surrounding states. And obviously with Virginia, there's many more players in Northern Virginia and the Tidewater. You have to be able to dominate the Tidewater area to if you're the in-state schools, Virginia and Virginia Tech. When Virginia Tech really hit their high points with Coach Beamer there, they dominated the beach, and by the beach I mean Virginia Beach. Right. So yeah, the Carolina has to be in there, especially when Dre Bly, who was from the 757. Dre did a great job recruiting that area. Not sure who's recruiting it now, but it always has been a primary recruiting area for the Tar Heels.
Another spotlight game this week in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Clemson on the road at Miami. pretty much a must-win game for both of these programs if they have any shot at still going to Charlotte to play one of the top teams in the ACC at the present time, at the halfway point of the college football season. Dabo Swinney this week really getting on his fans, saying that their expectations were out of whack, but didn't Coach Swinney pretty much say in the preseason of 2023 that they should always be thinking national championship in Tigertown?
I believe that was an exact quote, if I'm not mistaken. And fortunately, I've had the great fortune to be part of a program with Coach Spurrier the years that we were at Florida, that we became so dominant, won 7 SEC championships, a national championship, et cetera, through there. So the expectations do grow. They do expect you to win, and they not only expect you to win, they expect you to play well. And as a coach, I think that you have to have the same expectations, because if you don't, then all of a sudden you get into these big games and you say, I hope to win rather than we expect to win. Clemson should expect to win, and I think they do. You know, Dabo has a way of wording things to motivate players and to motivate his team.
A little bit later, we're going to talk with Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator for Ohio State. He's been a head coach at Cornell. He's been an assistant at multiple stops along his ascent in the coaching ranks. What are your memories of Jim Knowles when you guys spent time together at Duke University?
Jim is a very creative, very open-minded football coach. He is very intelligent, a Cornell grad. Jim is one of those guys that likes to go into his office and watch video on his own and build his plan and grow his plan, and then come in and present it to the staff. And Jim will have a great plan for the Nittany Lions this weekend, without a doubt. And wonderful guy to work with, and just a strong personality that can take over a room, without a doubt.
That's Coach Jim Collins. I'm Mike Waddell, and on the other side of this brief timeout here on Wild Dogs and Hogs, we'll come back with the defensive coordinator for the Ohio State Buckeyes, getting ready for their big game against Penn State on Saturday, Jim Knowles. That's coming up next, right here, all across the Old North State on the North Carolina Sports Network.
The original Saltworks has been serving the Wilmington area for over 50 years. Owner Bob Hubbard and his staff create a welcome atmosphere to go along with their home-cooked breakfast and lunch that simply cannot be rivaled anywhere in North Carolina. Eggs, waffles, hot dogs, crab cakes, and the best grits in the state. The original Saltworks, a proud partner of the North Carolina Sports Network.
We do have Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator from Ohio State, with us. Coach, big game against Penn State this week, but I think every game that you play at Ohio State has to be considered a big game. How do you manage to keep your emotions and your momentum always at that peak level when going into big games like you'll face this weekend against Penn State?
Well, you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, it's you're not allowed to lose at Ohio State, so you just maintain a high level of intensity and anxiousness, and it never goes away. That's just the reality of being at Ohio State.
Jim, do me a favor. Since you've been in the ACC, you've been in the SEC, you've been you're in the Big Ten now, you've been in the Big 12. I know how you work because we spent a lot of time in meeting rooms together. Tell me how your philosophy has changed or progressed as you've gone from conference to conference.
It was just when you and I were together, it was just starting to get into the hurry up offense, and we were changing and adapting to that. And then by the time I got to the Big 12, it was all, the Big 12 at the time was all about trying to stretch you vertically and taking deep shots and taking advantage of, what you give them and the opportunity. So had to adjust when I got out there and try to keep things in front more. And now in the Big Ten, it's really a mix. I mean, it's not quite the Big Ten of old where people are just trying to, run the ball and grind you for 4 quarters. There's a mix. So, I'm really utilizing a balance of what I learned in the ACC and the Big 12, to compete here in the Big Ten.
That's an interesting thought. I tell you the other thing that as I progress through my career and I see where you are now, the level of player that you're doing things with changes your philosophy at times also. Is that not true?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, those times where, you feel you typically would want to mix it up or do things differently or be creative. When you have a higher caliber of player, you got to be careful. You got to balance it. You got to, just give them a chance to make the plays, without putting them in bad position.
Jim, the interesting thing is it's nice to have guys that can step with the wrong foot, end up in the wrong gap, and tackle it for a 2-yard loss. It really makes a very difficult job, which you have in the competition. It makes it a little bit easier. But just very quickly, compare the level of play in the 3 major conferences that you've been in. I know philosophies have changed, offenses have changed, and you really just gave us an idea of that earlier. But give me a couple of sentences on how that has affected you and what you've done there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, I don't know, Jim, you've been around a while too. I don't know if it's so much the conference, like people say, as it is the times. I mean, the times change and the trends change. So you really have to be willing to change your philosophy based on the trends and what's happening out there. So, I don't see as much differences between the conferences as I just see the differences in the times and what's happening.
Now that's interesting. I agree. As I watch the game now, I do see that. Here's the major thing that I think affects all of it, Jim. And I really don't have great deal of experience with this. And there's 2 things: NIL and transfer portal. Mm-hmm. What's the philosophy with you guys as you deal with all that?
Well, I think we're keeping up with the NIL. I mean, the good thing about being at Ohio State is right. I really don't have to deal with it a whole lot. We have a whole group who's and they're doing it professionally, that you're not going to, it's Ohio State. So there's a long history, long tradition. Nobody's going to go out and do anything crazy, because right. That's not just what the fan base believes in, So I think we're keeping up with the times, but we're also not going out there NIL and just, trying to buy players. It's just not the way that Ohio State works. They're doing it professionally by the numbers. Transfer portal, fortunately, being at Ohio State, we've taken a couple. Right. And we've lost a couple. Of guys. I think it's a good thing. Obviously you always want to have some controls on it, but I think it's a good thing. Coaches can move, players should be able to move. And you and I know, Jim, a lot of times you get to Ohio State and kids are recruited and maybe they find out, hey, I just can't do it here at this school, at this program. So, they need an opportunity to move. But we're not huge in picking guys up, but a couple key guys here or there. We've had some good transfers, and it's helped us.
Last question for you from me, Jim, and this you can tell me it's none of my business. Head coaching, is it in your future at any point?
You know, it's so, as you know, Jim, it's so hard to predict in this profession. There's no ladder to climb, really. You know, sometimes it's sideways, sometimes it's up. Uh, you know, obviously, you work as hard as you can, and you want to grow where you're planning, and you want to do a good job. And you know, in the end, if things come to you, they come to you. You know, through hard work, and you remain open at that point. I think we all remain open throughout our career after the season when that time comes. And as long as you do a good job, maybe you'll get an opportunity.
Great answer, and I think you're well deserving of an opportunity to do that, Jim.
Appreciate that, Jim. Thanks.
We're talking with Jim Knowles. He is the defensive coordinator for the number 3 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes, in action this weekend in Columbus at the Horseshoe against the 7th ranked Nittany Lions of Penn State. The game will be broadcast on Fox. And Coach, as you look at your career, you've been a position coach, you've been a coordinator where you are right now, you've also been a head coach at your alma mater at Cornell. What pressures do you think were unique to being a head coach at the place where you played, as opposed to being a head coach where maybe you didn't know all the nuances of the job?
Well, as a head coach, you feel a tremendous sense of responsibility, to the players, to the university. And I feel that just, if that's your alma mater, I feel that gets even compounded. Cornell certainly not at this level football wise, but it's still it was very important to me when I was there, because it is your alma mater and you want to do a good job.
As a defensive coordinator, obviously you're in charge of the defense, but having been a head coach, did it make a difference in how you went and approached this opportunity at Ohio State, at Oklahoma State? What does a defensive coordinator, I mean, everybody hears that term, but what does that mean? Are you the head coach of the defense and you make all of the decisions for defense, or is it something to where you will compile all of the suggestions and take them up to your head coach, Ryan Day?
Well, you're a middle manager for sure. I mean, in the corporate structure, you have to put the plan together. You got to be organized. You got to utilize your resources and the different minds and the other assistants that work with you. You got to get everybody on the same page. So, yeah, you are running your own department. You're running the defense, and you're in charge of all aspects of it. But you also have to answer to the head coach. So that's all we all always have someone to answer. So anytime the head coach is going to have an opinion, you have to react to that. You got to keep that in mind. You got to have an idea of what his overall plan is for the team. And you have to always buy in to his leadership and his vision.
We're at the midpoint of this 2023 season. Your team is 6-0. After this weekend, you have a pair of road games at Wisconsin, at Rutgers, home against Michigan State and Minnesota before the big battle against Michigan. How tough is it to corral 18 to 23-year-olds, maybe 24-year-olds in some cases with the COVID year, to stay focused on playing the game that is in front of them instead of looking ahead to the obvious big game at the end of the year against that school up north?
It's all about routine. It's all about habits, and you stress those habits and the routine, and they are young men, but we're training them for life too. So you're creating good habits. You're teaching them how to produce results week to week in a stressful environment, where the demands are high. And these are lessons that are going to go with them through life. So you just build the habits, and you stress the routine, and you just rinse and repeat over and over again.
We'd be remiss if we didn't ask you about your all-star linebacker, Tommy Eichenberg. Tell me about what kind of a player he is. You know, the name of our show that Jimmy and I do here on the North Carolina Sports Network is called Wild Dogs and Hogs. I like the big offensive lineman. Jimmy is a wild dog guy. Is Eichenberg what you would call a wild dog? What kind of a player is he? What kind of a person is he?
Yeah, he's a guy that Jim Collins would love. He doesn't say a word. He's a guy that understands the big picture, and he knows where the ball is going to end up given the call. So he plays a lot faster than his combine numbers would be, because he sees the game, and he's making more and more checks for us on the field, which is really a positive thing for our defense. But yeah, he is a genuine tough guy and a fighter.
You have two young guys in Cody Simon and Steel Chambers. Could you have a better nickname or a name, I guess, than Steel Chambers if you're a linebacker? But has Eichenberg been a good leader, a mentor to these guys, trying to get them to, raise their level of play as you turn into the next chapter of this season?
Yeah, absolutely. And he does it by letting them see how he prepares, maybe less with words, but I think leadership a lot in our game. It's a tough man's game, and people look at what you do. They look at what you eat, how you live, your habits, how you study, and that's really how you impart that leadership to younger guys is by doing things the right way, and they see that.
Jim, we appreciate your time here on the North Carolina Sports Network before your big matchup against Penn State. Good luck to you and the Buckeyes, and hopefully we can talk to you again as you march on through the college football playoff and come January, hopefully playing for a national championship there in Columbus.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Good to see you, JC.
Good to see you, Jim. Good luck to you, my man.
The oldest restaurant in New Hanover County has a brand new look, feel, and taste, making it the #1 place for great food in Wrightsville Beach. Owner Jimmy Galeese and his wife Keaton have poured their hearts and soul into the reformation of this North Carolina coastal classic restaurant, and the impact has been fantastic. King Neptune serves fresh fish, chicken, and steak, and has an amazing wine and spirits to lift your dining experience to make it the best at the beach. Come taste the creations of Chef Chavez, and you'll know that you have tasted a little bit of heaven right there in Wrightsville Beach. That's King Neptune. Call them at 910-239-3055 and make your reservation now. King Neptune in Wrightsville Beach, a proud partner of the North Carolina Sports Network.
Good job.
Wild Dogs and Hogs here on the North Carolina Sports Network, continuing to chug on as we get ready for another big week of college football here in the state. And Jim Knowles, what a great guy. You can tell that he is like the eye of the storm, Jim Collins. He is the type of guy that just has that quiet intensity, very impressive guy. And I have to say, he's going to make me a Buckeye fan. And after working in the great state for 10 years at both Akron and Cincinnati with the football programs there, I developed kind of a healthy dislike for Ohio State. We had to schedule our game times opposite the Buckeyes because everybody's a Buckeye fan. But Jim Knowles, he's a guy that really is making a difference for Ryan Day there in Columbus. So it'll be a pretty good game this weekend. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I am too. I always try to watch Jim's defenses play because having worked with him for many years, I somewhat understand what his philosophy is, even though his philosophy has grown and changed through the years in his time from Duke to Okie State and now to Ohio State. And so I love to watch and see what he's doing that we used to do and how it fits. And I still, even though I've been out for half of a year now, I still try to watch a game and diagnose what people are doing and how people are doing it. But Jim is a very, very smart guy that builds a great plan and has a great demeanor. As you can see, Jim does not get overly excited. He is on an even keel and will present his program in a great light.
I'm wondering now, this weekend you're going back to Elon, and you're going to be a part of a big reunion weekend with some of your guys from back in the day, the first time that you've been able to go back and be on the sideline and take in a game as a fan. What's it like for your wife, Yvonne, to watch a game with you? I mean, you know so much about football. Can you just watch a game like a mortal like the rest of us, or are you always in your head? Is it like a beautiful mind? The equations and the formations and the strategies are just floating through your head. I got to imagine that's got to be a challenge for you.
Well, it is. I sometimes wish I could just sit back and follow the ball rather than, and by that I mean the casual fan out there. Let's face it, when the ball gets snapped, they're going to watch where the ball is going. Well, sometimes I never see where the ball goes because I'm watching what the corner's doing, the safety's doing, the linebacker's doing, and what the total scheme is. The ball falls within all that, but I can rattle on and talk about different plays as Yvonne and I watch the game, and she has absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, nor does she care what I'm talking about when it comes to that. But she's good enough to at least listen some, and then she's going to go into another room and watch a Hallmark movie, to be honest with you. So she puts me on my own when it comes to watching football.
Now, Yvonne's not on message boards. She's not on Twitter or X or whatever they're doing with social media these days, where fans go and they just unleash their knowledge, in quotes, of football on the rest of us. As a coach, and now that you're taking a step back and you're not involved on an intimate basis with the game planning and the inner workings of a program, what are your thoughts of how fans express what they know about football as opposed to what they really know? And maybe a better way to phrase this is, on a scale of 1 to 10, where is the average college football fan's understanding of what they're watching? Is it a 1? Is it a 5? Is it a 10?
Well below a 5, I will say that. The understanding of what's going on in those 100 yards and 53 yards on that field by the everyday fan, they think they understand a little, but they have no idea what actually goes into not only the physical process of the game, but the mental process of the game and the way things are developed. Not only how a plan it grows from Sunday until the ball is kicked off on Saturday. Every situation's talked about. Those big cards that you see coordinators have on sidelines, they have every situation and every call on there. So it's difficult. Even coaches, as coaches, we sometimes have a hard time seeing the entire 22 as a play develops. I've been around one guy that could do that better than anybody, and that's Steve Spurrier. But to see everything and have a comment that somebody's bad on offense, bad on defense, all fans basically see as the result. Did the play score a touchdown or did we stop them? And they have no idea usually how that play happened, whether it was a blitz on defense, whether they were playing 2 deep zone coverage, whether they were playing quarters coverage, whether they were playing 3 deep, whether they were playing man-to-man. You see what I just went through with the scenarios there. And you realize how much of that, and there's packages out there right now that look like they're man-to-man, but they're actually zone. And there's packages out there that look like they're zone and they're man-to-man. And how many fans actually understand what happens with an RPO, which is a run-pass option? And so, I could go on and on and on with this fan thing.
It really is frustrating. I'll tell you, I've been a director of athletics. I've been a broadcaster. I played high school and college football. I've been the team president of a pro football team that you and I worked together on. But I would still say my knowledge is somewhere around a 6. It's really hard to sit back and to listen to the number of media folks and the overwhelming number of fans who really think that they could do a better job or they know exactly what should be done. And I know that happens in every profession, but now that I'm back on this side of it, on the media side, and I have an opportunity to kind of survey that landscape, man, I have a lot of respect for these coaches, if for no other reason in the day and age of social media, to keep their patience and their wit about them and not just let loose. Because, and there are folks that do that. From time to time, Coach Gundy at Oklahoma State has gone off on people. Coach Spurrier used to go off on people from time to time. But it's really something, especially as you're starting to watch some of the programs in this state who have had historically great seasons on average. East Carolina, Appalachian State, even Gardner-Webb this year. These are 3 coaches, and Sean Clark and Mike Houston, Coach Trey Lamb at Gardner-Webb, who are all great football coaches, but I think it's important for people to understand that everybody's trying to win a game. And Jimmy, you and I talk off the air about this all the time. It's hard to win a game. It doesn't matter if North Carolina is playing Florida State or they're playing Virginia, where those 2 programs are right now. That other team is still stocked with good players and smart coaches, and they're going to come in and try to win the game. Nothing is a gimme. And I guess that's where it goes back to this phrase we hear all the time as a trap game. How do you guard against that? How do you maintain your composure when you're a coach, be an assistant coach or a head coach?
Well, those are the things that we've talked about all along, Mike. As you grow your program and you grow your team, you want to have a level of consistency. You want to grow as the season builds, and we as coaches, we all get nervous about games where you're undefeated and the other team is struggling, and you say, well, they're going to be highly motivated. This is their bowl game, all that. Well, if you're truly in the hunt for the national championship and you're truly in the hunt for your conference championship, then every game is a challenge that you accept and you go out and play your very best. Again, we've talked about adversity at times and facing adversity, and there's going to be adversity, and how you've built your program and how you practice will be how your team reacts to that adversity when it comes in a game, because it happens every game. There's some level of adversity that you face. I'm going to tell you an interesting story here, and I may have told this story before, but when I was coaching at another school, not Duke, not North Carolina, any of those, I happened to be out having a social beverage with some media type people. And these the media people had the opportunity to grade us each Sunday morning in the newspaper after we played on Saturday, and give your position a grade and give your team a grade. So I had the opportunity, and I asked this particular media person. I said, I put a napkin out on a bar. And I said, would you please draw up for me your favorite zone coverage against this formation? And I drew up a formation. He said, Jim, I can't do that. I said, oh, you're a man-to-man guy. I said, well, we'll draw up your favorite man coverage. He said, I can't do that. And I said, well, you're a blitz guy. Draw up your favorite blitz against that. He said, oh, I can't do that. And I said, well, why in the hell are you giving me a grade every Sunday morning? He said, because I can. It sells papers. And he's right. It did. It didn't matter whether he knew anything about it at all. If the linebacker I was coaching didn't make 10 tackles and intercept 2 passes, then he didn't play well. So, You just have to live with it. As a coach, you watch you stay off social media, number one, and you don't read very many newspapers. And of course, nobody reads newspapers anymore anyway. And you obviously do not listen to guys like me talk that think I know everything about it. But it's tough. You have to have thick skin. One thing about coaching, Mike, is, and especially at the level of Ohio State and North Carolina, these Power 5 schools, the NFL, all of them. One thing that you find very quickly is that the highs are not nearly as high as the lows are low. You put a win behind you much quicker than you do a loss, because those losses sting, man. You've worked 70 plus hours in a week putting a game plan together and building your team, and it's gone on for a year, and then all of a sudden you go out and you don't play well. Well, maybe the other team plays better than you play, but it's hard to accept. And you just have to have thick skin. You have to get up on Sunday morning and at 6 o'clock and be back in the office and get ready to start that 70-hour week again. Because guess what? You got another game coming this week.
You have a big reunion coming up this weekend at Elon for the big Phoenix-Monmouth game coming up on Saturday at 2:30. Have fun over there. Enjoy yourself. Try not to give Tony too much advice when you're on the sideline using that pass, and we'll see you back next week right here on Wild Dogs and Hogs. How's that?
Sounds good, Mike. Thanks.